Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Good morning. We are standing in front of the Layton Memorial called Stronger Together. 60 years ago, the Commonwealth Cooperative Federation brought together people of faith, working people, farmers to form the New Democratic Party of Canada. Tommy Douglas, who was the first leader, said that we need to have a national purpose, that if we mobilize all our human and material resources together to provide not just the freedom from need, but the freedom from fear. We just went through 16 months of fearful times, but as Canadians, we are stronger together because we have Medicare, because Medicare was brought together by the NDP and many others folks. I want to point out that this Stronger Together principle is also championed by my late husband, Jack Layton. Because in the early 80s, there was another health crisis. It was a crisis fueled by injustice, and it affected people that are marginalized, that are vulnerable. And this health crisis is relentless and it kills. It's the AIDS crisis. Jack Layton at the time was the chair of the Board of Health. He brought together people living with AIDS, with scientists, public health officials, and created an AIDS defense plan that prevented a lot of death. This principle of stronger together is needed now more than ever. And Tommy Douglas said 60 years ago in the founding of the NDP, he said that we have an apartheid system in Canada that is shameful, that the way that Canada is treating Indigenous people. And there's appalling and terrible conditions in reserves. Jack fought hard to dismantle this apartheid system. And I'm so glad that we have another person to continue this fight, a person that lived with the principle and the motto that dream no little dreams. It's never too late to change the world. With love, hope, and optimism, we can do it. And let's not let anyone tell you it can't be done. Courage, my friends. And here's Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP.
Thanks so much, Olivia. Thank you, thank you. Thank you all. I'm just really honored to be here and to both reflect on 60 years of the New Democratic Party, of our movement, and of the fact that, first and foremost, we have been fighting for people. From the beginning, from Tommy Douglas and onwards, our focus has been how do we get as much help as possible to as many people as possible. And today, also reflecting on Jack Layton, I got to share with you a story. Olivia knows this story as well, that when I first ran in politics, it was under Jack Layton as leader. And he said to me when we were at an event, it was a downtown Call Day parade. We were trying to win in Brampton, and Brampton had never elected a New Democrat. And I was nervous about it, and I wasn't sure if we would be able to win, but I knew that people needed a strong voice. He took me aside, and he hit me with those powerful words. He said, you know, Jagmeet, you're fighting for the right reasons. The people need New Democrats representing them because we're going to fight for them. And don't let them tell you it can't be done. And years later now, after that story, it's a great honor to be the 8th leader of this party, to continue to fight for folks. In this pandemic, we fought to get more help to more people. We're going to continue to do that in the recovery. So that legacy of putting people first, of people over profits, of making sure we take better care of each other. That's exactly what we're continuing to do. We will do that moving forward. We've done that in this pandemic. And in honor of the 60 years of our movement, and in honor of Jack Layton, We are going to continue to carry that flame of justice, of equity and fairness in protecting workers, in standing up for families, in protecting our planet, and creating a brighter future. Un grand merci. Je suis tellement fier d'être chef d'un mouvement, d'un parti qui défend les intérêts de monsieur, madame, tout le monde. Notre mouvement était fondé par les travailleurs et travailleuses. Et depuis le début de notre mouvement, on était là pour les gens. Et dans ces temps difficiles, dans ces pandémies, on a continué d'aider les gens avec plus d'aide pour plus de gens. Et si je peux partager une petite histoire de notre ancienne chef, Jack Layton, quand j'étais député ou quand j'étais candidat dans une élection pour la première fois, c'était pour Jack Layton comme chef. Et il m'a dit que c'est tellement important d'avoir des néo-démocrates qui représentent des comtés parce qu'on livre les marchandises, on aide les gens. Et il a dit que jamais laisser les gens de dire que ce n'est pas possible. Et on a essayé fort et maintenant je suis 8e chef de ce mouvement. Je suis tellement fier de ce qu'on a fait et ce qu'on va continuer de faire pour aider les gens, de défendre les intérêts de monsieur, madame, tout le monde. Merci. Thank you. I'm ready to take questions that you might have. Certainly. The party has been at the foundation a party for workers, a party to lift up people. And Tommy Douglas showed us that when you are in government, you can make real changes. So he was premier of Saskatchewan, fought to bring in universal Medicare in Saskatchewan, the first province to bring it in. And he fought to make sure that was something across Canada. That same legacy of fighting for people, people before profits, putting the interests of families and people who need help first is exactly what we've continued to do. We're the only party right now that's providing a third option to the same rerun that we've seen after a difficult economic time. We've seen either liberals and conservatives cut help that people need with austerity, or they have put the burden on those that have gone through the difficult times. We're saying that we don't have to do that. We can put people first and we can put the burden on those, the ultra wealthy, the ultra rich, and ask them to pay their fair share so we can invest that back in Canadians. So we've seen this ongoing tradition of fighting for people. Healthcare has been key, workers have been key, and now we're up against a massive crisis with the climate crisis. Again, in the tradition of New Democrats, we can fight this crisis by creating thousands and thousands of good jobs that reduce emissions. So that's the same tradition of fighting for people, for standing up for families, and putting people first that we're going to continue. I did, and the reason is we are up against why we shouldn't have an election right now. We are up against a potential fourth wave of the pandemic of COVID-19. We're hearing a lot of worrying results around the Delta variant. Given all this concern, I think it's not the right time to have an election. I think Justin Trudeau should be focused on getting everyone vaccinated. I think that should be our primary focus. We need to make sure people get the help they need. We know that a lot of people have sacrificed and struggled. We need to continue to deliver the help that they need. Also, Justin Trudeau made a lot of promises. If he wants to deliver on those promises, let's get back to Ottawa and pass more legislation, get more help delivered to more people. I think that's the right thing to do. We are committed to continue to fight for people. And I think that in this pandemic, we should focus on getting people vaccinated, getting help to people, and going to an election is the wrong thing to do right now. And that's why I asked the Governor General to consider there is no cause, there is no reason to have an election, but for the fact that Justin Trudeau wants power. And sure, people might say that that's what governments do. It shouldn't be what we do in the midst of a pandemic. But I hope to expose really that there is no reason for this election. Normally, elections in the law are held every 4 years. And the exception to that is if there's a loss of confidence in Parliament. That hasn't happened. So without a loss of confidence in the House, what is the reason for Justin Trudeau calling this election? The only reason is his pursuit of power. And I know people will say, well, that's what governments do. I don't think that's what governments do when you're in the middle of a pandemic, when you're up against a potential fourth wave, when you're up against such serious problems. I don't think you do what you think is normal to do. You got to do what's right to do, which is to fight for people, make sure people get vaccinated, make sure people have help. That's what I think is right. And I don't think the cynical politics of fighting for power should be the precedent. It should be about what we do to help people in this difficult time. We are ready, and we're confident that we can show Canadians that we've been there for them and that we fought for them and will continue to fight for them in the recovery. I just don't think it's the right time. I think the priority should be getting people vaccinated. There's still a large percentage of people who want to get vaccinated. There are some folks call hard to vaccinate because of lack of access, or they might be a little reticent or a little reserved in getting vaccinated, but evidence has shown with a little bit of explanation, with some more transparency, with some more conversations, those hard to vaccinate people, whether it's because of lack of resources, lack of access, or because they need a little bit more information, they are people that will get vaccinated. We can get to 90%. We can take care of people. And I think that should be the priority. Fighting for people has always been our legacy. That's why we're here today with Jack Layton and 60 years of New Democrats. And that's what we want to continue to do. Sure. Yeah. Sure. Just getting asked to show off my third language skill and do a Punjabi hit. So give me 1 sec. ਅੱਜ ਆਪਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ 60 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ 60 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਰ੍ਹੇਗੰਢ ਮਨਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ ਕਿ 60 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਲਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਜੋ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਹੈ ਆਪਾਂ ਆਮ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਲੜੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਲੜੇ ਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਨਿਊ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਸ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਹੋਰ ਸਹਾਇਤਾ ਦਵਾਇਆ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਲੋਕ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਆਮ ਲੋਕ ਆਪਣਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਟੈਕਸ ਭਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਸੋ ਆਪਣਾ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਮੰਗ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਤੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਹੀ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਦਵਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਦੇਣ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਨਵੈਸਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਸਮਾਲ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਨਵੈਸਟ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਆਇਆ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਗਲਤ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਹੁਣ ਚੌਥਾ ਵੇਵ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਖਤਰਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੈਕਸੀਨੇਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਜੇ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਤਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਤਿਆਰ ਆ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਲੜਨ ਨੂੰ ਪਰ ਸਾਡੀ ਜੋ ਮਕਸਦ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨੀ ਨਾ ਕਿ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਲੜਨੀ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ Any follow-up from that Punjabi question? Or we got Cantonese, we can cover a lot of languages as well.
We will now go to Zoom to take questions online. So I would like to invite members of the media to please use the raise hand function to ask question and follow-up. J'aimerais maintenant inviter les membres des médias sur la plateforme Zoom de bien utiliser la fonction lever la main pour poser votre question et question de suivi. We will go ahead and start with Chris Reynolds with the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh. Hi, Ms. Chow. Thanks very much for taking our questions. I had a question about Afghan interpreters. We've heard a lot over the past couple of weeks about how the Canadian government should and now is to some extent acting on the urgent need to get former interpreters and former staffers for Canadian services in Afghanistan resettled in Canada because of the danger of the Taliban as it takes swaths of the country. But even after the government has promised to resettle some interpreters, we're still hearing calls that there's a lot of danger to siblings and parents and extended family of these translators whose lives are also under threat. And now we see the U.S. is looking like they're going to be taking in former Afghan staff members for NGOs and also for even some journalism outlets. So I'm wondering to what extent Canada should expand the eligibility to family members and to other staff members and interpreters who weren't just working for the Canadian military?
Thanks so much. The questions from Chris Reynolds regarding Afghani interpreters and the worsening situation in Afghanistan. And so on that, I think it's very clear that we've got a responsibility to people who put their lives at risk. These Afghani interpreters put their lives at risk to support our troops in Afghanistan. And right now they're in harm's way. With the resurgence of the Taliban, things are getting really dangerous and really scary. And so there's been some efforts, but there's not been enough. And I think it's got to be clear that those that supported us in our times of need have to be helped out. And the other question was around expanding the eligibility to the friend or to the family members and also other interpreters. I think we need to be very broad in our approach. There are a lot of people in Afghanistan that need help and that helped out Canadians and that should qualify for support, should qualify for resettlement to Canada. So I think we need to be very broad in our understanding of the people that have been threatened. If an interpreter risked their life and now their families' lives are at risk, we've got a responsibility to support them now. And so I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to do as much as possible to protect these interpreters, that these Afghanis who supported us, they are in danger now and need our help.
Thanks very much. Also, just turning to the prospect of an election again. I know you don't necessarily speak directly to polls, which wax and wane depending on the day, but you and the NDP remain very popular compared to previous recent elections. But or 2019 anyway. But NDP's numbers are still relatively low in Quebec. I'm wondering if you have a particular strategy that you've adapted now to Quebec to boost your parties and your own favorability numbers in that province as well, which is looking like a real challenge despite popularity elsewhere in the country.
Another question from Chris Reynolds around elections and some Quebec considerations. And so first I want to say New Democrats will be ready if an election is called. If Justin Trudeau calls an election, we will be absolutely ready. We've got great candidates who care about their communities, who care about fighting for their communities. And we've shown in this pandemic, in this difficult time, that we were there for people when they needed it. And so when it comes to Quebec, the same applies. In Quebec, no other opposition party can point to a single victory that they won for people to make people's lives better. And we can point to doubling CERB. The Liberals wanted to start it at $1,000 and we forced the Liberals to double that. We forced Justin Trudeau to double that to get more help to more people. We brought in help for students. We fought to make sure we got paid sick leave, the first of its kind at the federal level. And we fought to increase the wage subsidy. All of these measures improve the lives of Canadians broadly and Quebecers as well. And we can show people in Quebec that it wasn't the Bloc, it wasn't Conservatives who got you more help. When you were in a tough time, you Democrats were there for you. And if other parties aren't going to step up in one of the most difficult challenges we face as a country, when are they going to step up? And I'm confident we can show Canadians that just the same way we fought for them in the pandemic, we're going to fight for them in the recovery. I'm going to show Quebecers that they are better off when they elect more New Democrats because we fight for them.
Nous allons maintenant aller à Catherine Lévesque avec la presse canadienne. C'est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh.
Bonjour.
Je voulais vous entendre justement sur cette possible élection là, qui pourrait survenir dans les prochains jours et savoir en fait si vous pensez que c'est une bonne idée en fait de les déclencher alors qu'on s'apprête à avoir une quatrième vague.
Absolument non. Je pense qu'avec la vraie menace d'une quatrième vague, on ne doit pas déclencher une élection. Et en plus, on sait que la seule raison pour laquelle Justin Trudeau veut déclencher une élection, c'est pour avoir plus de pouvoir. Dans une pandémie, avec la menace d'une quatrième vague, c'est la mauvaise chose à faire. Ce qu'on doit faire, c'est de s'assurer que tout le monde est vacciné. On sait qu'il y a plusieurs personnes qui veulent être vaccinées, mais qui n'ont pas les moyens, peut-être qu'ils n'ont pas accès aux services de vaccination ou ils ont besoin de plus d'informations pour être convaincus. Donc, on doit faire tout ce qui est possible pour vacciner toute la population et puis on doit livrer l'aide aux gens. On sait qu'il y a toujours des grands défis pour les petites et moyennes entreprises. On sait qu'il y a toujours des défis pour les travailleurs et travailleuses. il y a plusieurs secteurs qui ne sont pas ouverts, donc on doit les aider. Et pour moi, ça doit être la priorité. Aider les gens, vacciner la population, et ça ne doit pas être la priorité de déclencher une élection dans ce temps.
Et je vous entendais parler de la stratégie au Québec. D'ailleurs, je fais le tour un peu de vos candidats investis. Il en manque encore énormément dans la province. Je me demandais si les élections devaient être déclenchées, par exemple, le 15 août. Est-ce que votre parti sera prêt et est-ce que vous aurez tous vos candidats investis à ce moment-là?
Merci pour les questions. Oh, oui, on va être prêt. On est toujours dans une meilleure position qu'on était dans l'élection de 2019. On a beaucoup de candidats extraordinaires qui étaient déjà nominés. On a plus de travail à faire, mais on est dans une meilleure position. Et on a un bilan de comment on s'est battu pour les gens. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont déjà fait pour aider les gens? On peut montrer ça, mais encore, au lieu d'avoir une élection, c'est ma priorité de continuer d'aider les gens. Et je dis encore que Justin Trudeau ne doit pas déclencher une élection. On doit continuer notre travail. On doit retourner à Ottawa pour livrer plus d'aide. On doit s'assurer que tout le monde soit vacciné. Ça doit être notre priorité. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Maintenant, nous allons aller à Juliane Lapointe avec Radio-Canada. C'est à vous.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Singh. J'aimerais vous entendre peut-être sur les interprètes afghans. Vous entendu en anglais, mais peut-être en français. Il y a une manifestation ce matin à Ottawa des anciens interprètes qui demandent que le gouvernement accélère le processus pour ramener les membres de leur famille au pays. Vous, qu'est-ce que vous dites sur ce qui a été fait jusqu'ici, annoncé aussi jusqu'ici par le gouvernement? Est-ce que vous croyez qu'il faut en faire plus pour aider les interprètes, mais aussi les membres de leur famille?
Merci encore. Avec la situation en Afghanistan, c'est clair qu'on doit aider les interprètes qui ont aidé nos forces canadiennes en Afghanistan. C'est clair qu'ils sont en danger à ce moment, sont menacés par les talibans. Donc, ce qu'on doit faire, c'est d'aider ces interprètes avec plus de ressources pour les amener ici au Canada, mais aussi, je pense, on doit avoir une approche plus large pour reconnaître que leurs familles sont aussi en danger. Et j'appuie la demande d'aider les interprètes et aussi leurs familles.
Concernant, je vais vous ramener aussi sur de possibles élections. Vous avez parlé de la possibilité de la quatrième vague, que pour vous, c'est peut-être pas le moment d'aller en campagne électorale, mais qu'est-ce que ça voudrait dire à ce moment-là pour le NPD d'être en campagne alors que les menaces du variant et tout ça, on vous a vu dans les dernières semaines déjà là, des images de vous en train de serrer des mains, de prendre des selfies. Est-ce que vous allez avoir une approche plus prudente si effectivement on se lance dans une campagne électorale?
C'est une question importante. Premièrement, encore, je répète encore que c'est exactement pourquoi on pense que ce n'est pas le bon moment d'avoir une élection. C'est la mauvaise chose à faire de déclencher une élection. Mais pour répondre à comment on va gérer une campagne électorale, on va continuer d'être vigilant pour suivre les recommandations des experts en santé publique. C'est essentiel que si une élection est déclenchée, premièrement, on ne doit pas le faire, mais si c'était déclenché, on doit être prudent, on doit être vigilant et on va essayer de faire tout ce qu'on peut, pour suivre les règles et pour être sécuritaire et protéger notre équipe, mais plus important, le reste du Canada.
Thank you for listening today, and thank you for supporting us with our sponsors. Please go to depictions.media for more information and click on our contact link and let us know how we can help bring your story and help bring us to a better world. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.